What happens when you don't sleep for 11 days straight? What they did to this woman will absolutely terrify you. This is the story of Isabel Gordy, a Scottish woman from 1662 who was accused of witchcraft. Her trial left behind one of the most detailed and bizarre confessions in the history of the European witch hunts. But the real horror isn't what she confessed to. It's how they made her confess. In the 17th century, a confession was the gold standard of evidence, more important than any physical proof. To get one, courts turned to torture. But they had rules. The Catholic Church approved of what they called clean torture methods, techniques that didn't leave visible marks like broken bones or bleeding. One of the most brutal of these was sleep deprivation. For 11 excruciating days and nights, Isabel Gordy was kept awake. What happened next reveals a terrifying truth about the human brain. Modern neuroscience gives us a chilling look inside what Isabel's mind was going through. After just 72 hours without sleep, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, reasoning, and self-control, essentially shuts down. Your brain's chemical balance goes haywire. Dopamine and serotonin levels plummet, leading to severe depression, paranoia, and a complete loss of emotional control. This is the point where reality begins to fracture. The brain, desperate for rest, starts to create its own. Hallucinations begin. You might see things that aren't there, hear voices, and completely lose your sense of time. Days can feel like minutes, and minutes like an eternity. Medieval torturers had perfected several methods to achieve this state. There was the vigil, where victims were forced to stand in one spot for days on end, often in uncomfortable positions. If they swayed or fell, they were prodded back up. Then there was the walking torture, where they were forced to walk endlessly in a small circle until their minds and bodies gave out. And perhaps the most insidious was the waking, a constant sensory assault. Guards would bang pots and pans, shout, and make incessant noise, never allowing a moment of silence or peace. As the days wore on, the victim's mind would completely unravel. They'd experience microsleeps, brief, uncontrollable moments of sleep, lasting just a few seconds, but these weren't refreshing. The brain would jolt awake, more disoriented than before. This constant cycle of near sleep and forced wakefulness leads to a complete breakdown of reality. Victims would begin to have vivid visual and auditory hallucinations. They'd lose all sense of who they were, where they were, and what was real. For some, this torture led to permanent insanity. For others, the sheer physical stress on the body could cause a fatal heart attack. Now, let's look at what Isabel Gordy confessed to. She claimed she could fly on a piece of straw. She described lavish feasts with the Queen of the Fairies and detailed her meetings with the devil in the form of a man. She said she could transform herself into a cat or a hare. To the witch hunters, this was proof of her pact with evil. But to a neuroscientist today, these are classic symptoms of a brain under siege from extreme sleep deprivation. Her sensation of flying, that's likely an autoscopic hallucination, a type of out-of-body experience where you feel like you're floating and observing yourself from a distance. A brain starved of sleep can easily produce this feeling. Meeting the devil. These are phantom hallucinations, where the brain creates entire characters and scenarios that feel completely real. The transformation into animals. This points to depersonalization, a terrifying state where you lose your own sense of identity and feel disconnected from your own body. Her entire confession wasn't a record of witchcraft. It was a diary of her mind collapsing. The scariest part, the damage isn't just temporary. Studies show that after 96 hours, just for days of sleep deprivation, the brain can start to suffer permanent physical damage. Brain cells in the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, which is crucial for memory, can literally die off. This is irreversible brain damage. The torture didn't just break their will, it physically destroyed parts of their brain. Isabel Gordy was just one of tens of thousands. Throughout the witch trials that swept across Europe, sleep deprivation was a go-to method for securing confessions. Countless innocent people, their minds shattered by this clean torture, confessed to impossible crimes and were subsequently executed. The system was generating its own evidence, creating witches out of sleep-deprived victims. Eventually, the authorities noticed a problem, but it wasn't a crisis of conscience. In 1657, the Pope himself issued a decree. It stated that sleep deprivation as a form of interrogation should not exceed 72 hours. Why? Not because it was inhumane, but because it was too effective. It was producing too many wild, unbelievable confessions that were starting to undermine the credibility of the trials themselves. They realized that after a certain point, a person would confess to absolutely anything, making the confessions worthless. You might think this is all just a dark chapter of history, but you'd be wrong. These same principles of psychological torture are still in use today. Modern intelligence agencies, including the CIA, have used methods like stress positions, sensory bombardment with loud music, and, of course, sleep deprivation during interrogations. It's classified as psychological warfare, and it is a crime under international law. The techniques have been refined, but the goal is the same: to break a person's mind to get what you want. And here's a final, unsettling thought that brings it all home. Have you ever pulled an all-nighter for an exam or a big project? Remember how you felt the next day? The brain fog, the irritability, maybe even feeling a little paranoid or seeing shadows in the corner of your eye. That's your brain giving you a tiny taste of what Isabel Gordy experienced. Research shows that the brain doesn't distinguish between voluntary and forced sleep deprivation. The biological process is the same. An all-nighter can trigger mild hallucinations, emotional instability, and impaired judgment. You are, in a very real sense, temporarily damaging your own brain. The story of Isabel Gordy is a terrifying reminder of our fragility. It shows how easily the human mind can be dismantled, and how an essential, beautiful thing like sleep can be twisted into one of the most effective and cruel instruments of torture ever devised. It's a testament to the fact that sometimes the most horrifying monsters aren't hiding in the shadows, but are locked inside our own exhausted minds, waiting to be unleashed. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating and horrifying as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history and science. Stay curious, and please, get some sleep.